Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here today. Today's workshop, The Power of Diversity, Personal Reflections on Identity and the Benefits of Inclusion, is being recorded. It will be available on our website shortly after the program conclusion. At the present time, all participants are muted. This is temporary. We will enable you to unmute after the initial presentation and invite you to participate fully in this workshop. We not only invite you to participate, but we encourage you to participate. Please listen to our panel give you a brief introduction to this workshop. Teresa?
Good morning. Diversity is being invited to the party. Inclusion is being asked to dance. How do we as realtors and human beings incorporate this into our professional and personal lives? Yasmin?
There are many topics that are part of the diversity and inclusion conversation. As this panel considered how best to start the conversation, two words kept showing up: awareness and empathy. Michael?
Some of us have been to diversity and inclusion workshops. Reflecting on those experiences led us to the concept of microaggressions. Microaggressions are defined as indirect, subtle, or unintentional discrimination against others. Most often, the victims of microaggressions are marginalized groups such as a racial or ethnic minority. Judith?
However, it's likely that most everyone has been the target of a microaggression at some point in their lives. Those of us who have the benefit and protection of privilege often discount the effect of microaggressions, and we need to change that. Richard?
Today, we want to tell our stories and hear yours. By sharing our experiences and insights, we're committing to building a community with others dedicated to achieving more diversity and inclusion in our workplace and our communities.
Thank you, panel. We will now begin the storytelling. As you listen to our panel tell their stories, please consider volunteering to share your own. If you did not pre-volunteer to share a story, but have decided that you would like to share, signal that to us by typing "story" in the chat box. As you prepare to tell your story, please consider keeping it less than 3 minutes. This will allow us to hear as many as possible. You are still muted, and we ask you to remain so while the stories are being shared. There will be time for discussion and feedback after the storytelling. If you feel the need to emote over a story, we encourage you to use the meeting reaction buttons on your Zoom control bar. If you're having any technical difficulties, please alert staff by typing your issue in the chat box. Let's begin. Teresa?
Thank you, Paula. The issue of diversity is something that I think many of us don't think about until it hits home, and that's why these stories are so important. So for me personally, this started as a child. In my early childhood years, I didn't know that this was an issue. I played ball with everybody in the city of Philadelphia, so there was a very diverse group. My first experience that changed how I thought about this was when a friend of mine and I, who had hung out in a group for years together, met on a corner one night. And it just so happened we were the only two there. We decided that we wanted to go ice skating that night. And we ran home excited to tell our parents where we were going and ask for a ride. When we both came back to the corner, we both were very uncomfortable. And this was the first time this had happened to us. We didn't know what to say. And he said, "Teresa, I don't know how to tell you this, but my parents said I can't go with you because you're white." My friend was African American. And so I said, "I don't know how to tell you this, but I'm not allowed to go with you either because you're Black." And it wasn't that our parents cared. They were concerned about how it was going to be portrayed when we got to the ice skating rink. And they didn't want us to be harassed at that young age and not know how to deal with it. We didn't even know that was going to be a thing. So we were very uncomfortable, and it was our first experience with, wow, we're different, and we didn't know it. Fast forward a couple days later, we're going to the same school. We're on the bus together, just having a great time, kind of got past that whole experience. And the bus driver made a very derogatory comment about me and my relationship with my friend, and used a term I'm not comfortable repeating, but basically used a derogatory term toward a Black human being and told me that I was that lover. I think you can all figure this out. We're all adults here. This was very upsetting to me, and I immediately turned around and started to kind of go off on the bus driver. My friend took a very different approach. He wanted me to just walk away and ignore it. He wanted me to let it go. And when we got off the bus and I asked why, he said it was best to let those things just lie and walk away. This was my first experience personally with understanding that how I was going about living my life was very different from how my friend was going about living his life. And I didn't think he should have had to take that. And I didn't think we needed to be complacent, compliant, or let that go. That changed how I felt about diversity and inclusion for the rest of my life, and including how I handle my business and my career. I don't want to be silent. I want to be the person that speaks up and has a voice. And I want us all to be treated fairly. I also don't want my children to grow up in a world where they feel like they are different in any way. And so this is what started my passion about making sure that all people are treated fairly and included. Yasmin?
I want to share a little bit differently. We all have come from different backgrounds. Of course, that's our diversity, and being included with different things. It's hard, especially when you are multicultural. So I'm going to share with you something from a background perspective, of a multicultural perspective of how I deal with things. Growing up in a multicultural environment was a lesson that was hard to learn, but greatly appreciated. We speak of diversity and inclusion in everyday world, but I was living it under one roof. Both my parents were from the same country, but had very different languages, very different cultures. I went to a school that practiced a variety of culture and languages as well. So, of course, coming to America, you go to school and you have to learn English. And of course, you have other individuals that speak other languages that you've never heard of. You know, when my siblings were mature enough to get married, we had more divisions, more culture, more languages to accept. And now we have our nieces and nephews getting married, and we have culture, language, and religion to accept as well, because things have drastically changed over time. This was sort of a trickle down effect, if you think of it, because you start from one thing and it just keeps coming down and getting broader and broader and broader. There were more and more things that were added to the list, of course. I have learned to accept everyone and everything that comes with it. Humanity, humility, and being humble was the outcome of this experience. Not to be judgmental and to acknowledge both sides of the street. I don't know what one is going through or how their day by day of life is evolving. I don't know what problems they are facing mentally, physically, emotionally. What I do know is that I can support, try to give the best advice to my knowledge, and be genuine with the individuals that I see every day. I have taken these teachings and am raising my children with the same morals and concepts that I learned as a child, being very different and seeing all the differences. It becomes a little hard because you have that experience, but trying to explain to a new generation gets a little tougher. For a great change, one must find and correct their flaw. And yes, we all have a flaw. We may not know it. That's why some things are, unintentional when we say things to others, because it's a flaw. We just don't know it comes out. I carry this teaching with me, and I'm proud to have learned this at a noticeably young age. I use this tool everywhere in my everyday life. So the three H's that I live by is humanity, humility, and humble. And it has guided me to better understand the world. You know, the reason why I say this is we all don't realize what is around us and how we can change things and how we can make things better. You know, we're talking about diversity and inclusion, but this is not just directed towards realtors, professionals. This is also for our everyday living of our surrounding, you know, our neighbors, our friends, our peers. We just try to make the best of things that we can because we want to ensure that nobody feels uncomfortable and is included in everything. Michael?
Thank you, Yasmin and Teresa. My name is Michael Howell, and I am biracial. My mother is German and my father is Black. My dad met my mom in the service, and they were married in 1968, and I was born in 1969. I was born in Conshohocken. This is back when Conshohocken actually had a hood, or ghetto, if you want to call it, whatever the term is that you use. But my dad was a very ambitious man, and he moved us out to West Norton Township into the suburbs of a little town called Bettswood. And he wanted the best for his kids. So he sent my brother and I to St. Teresa, a Catholic school. We were not Catholic, but he just wanted us to have a better education. So we were not only the first Black family or interracial family in the community, my brother and I were the first Black kids to attend the school. And one of the stories that I remember, I didn't notice it so much then, but obviously, you know, as time grows on and you have a new level of awareness, you think back to how things happened. And there was one in particular thing that happened where I was at the water fountain, and a friend of mine and I, you know, were playing the game. He tapped me on the back or tapped me in the head and kind of turned away. And I was the one that got caught by the sister, the principal. So when I went to, you know, pop him in the back of the head, she came over, and I was the one that was scolded. But the punishment at the time was I was put in a place that the Catholic religion calls purgatory. And for me, that was something I was unaware of. And what that was I was to sit in the front of the class right up against the blackboard while the rest of the class was behind me. And I spent probably a good, I don't remember exactly how much time that was, but it was a good amount of, you know, for the rest of at least the next couple of weeks. And as I reflected on that, it really started to make me understand and think about the differences, even back, you know, now, but even back then, and started to do a lot more investigating and trying to make myself aware. And one of the things that I was made aware of was that it was only until 1967 that the United States allowed interracial marriages. So as I went on in life, you know, I started realizing that I was the first to do many things. I was not only the first in the uh, in the community. My dad, you know, raised us in. It was the first Black in the school. I found myself always wanting to try, not realizing it, but to be included. And it carried on throughout my life. It carried on when we eventually went to Norristown High School. And when I got to Norristown High School, how I was trying to be included with the Black kids and the culture of that Black, you know, the people that I kind of more identified with. And all through my life, I think it ended up being a good thing for me, because it made me very ambitious. It made me very strong-willed in wanting to have not only diversity, but to be included in inclusion. So what I did was I started most recently getting more involved, and I did take a master's class and a workshop on diversity and inclusion. And I'm happy to be now a part of chairing the Diversity Inclusion Committee here at the association. And what I've learned about diversity and inclusion is, number one, what we're doing right now is we need to bring a more of an awareness to it. Also, we need to be more empathetic of others. We all come from different places, different perspectives. There's opportunity in those different perspectives. When we come together, all together, we include people, we take everybody's perspective. I've learned that together we're better, together we're stronger, and everyone wins truly when we have a more diverse and inclusive environment. And the last thing was engagement. And that's what we're doing here today. We're putting awareness on it. We're showing there's reason for opportunity, engagement, and also empathy. Thank you. Judith.
Good morning. So my story is that earlier this fall, I met with a pair of builders to discuss an addition I'm planning for a house that I own. And I explained to them that I ultimately plan on downsizing to this home. And we sat down and I laid out my architect's drawing. And I also had a list that I had compiled of the scope of work that I wanted them to complete. Well, I almost got finished with my line of thinking when they kind of interrupted me, suggesting that I clearly needed help. And there was an implication that I might be a bit out of touch of how this thing works. And maybe I jumped into something that was above my pay grade. And they made suggestions such as maybe I should get rid of the whole 4-year-old heating system instead of just adding air conditioning to it. And maybe I should just tear out all the floors. And, you know, it wasn't the sharing of their recommendations or even the attempts to upsell me on things that got my hackles up. I'm all about hearing new ideas. And I think I have a healthy enough ego to know that my thinking is not flawless. But from the tone combined with the content, I began to feel that I was being marginalized in the decision-making process, not included as a part of it, which is really what I was there for. And I think if I could have been a fly on the wall there, I would have seen these two guys sitting across the table talking to the little lady, or maybe to someone who was on the verge of senility. Then I thought, well, maybe it's the white hair. I don't know. But or maybe I just should have opened with, I've been buying and renovating properties for over 30 years. But then I thought, you know, if I were a guy sitting here, he wouldn't have to open up with justifying who he was or defining who he was. The conversation would have probably just unfolded, maybe with a different tone. Well, I left that meeting and I thought, they're not my guys. They're not my guys. And then on the way home, I realized that what they had done was they judged this book by the cover. But what they didn't realize was that I had stuck a whole lot of paychecks in between the pages of that book, and they weren't going to get them. And then just before I got home, I had this sort of epiphany from that, what I consider now in retrospect, and since I've been invited to participate in this great group, that was a microaggression. And my introspection then was, how many paychecks have I left on the table? And I think that's a story to be developed and a story for another day. But whether it was because I was a woman or whether it was because I'm older, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We all have to think differently. And that's my story. Richard?
Thank you, Judah. I'm going to talk about the microaggressions that happen to people that are of different nationalities and come from different countries. Now we know that there are fair housing laws that protect these people, but my story is very personal because I'm a first generation American. Both of my parents moved to this country as adults. Now, while my mother came from an English speaking country, she did have to learn Americanisms, but my father came to this country speaking not one word of English. Now, he learned to speak it fluently, but he always had a very strong accent. But to anybody that has foreign born parents, they'll tell you this: you don't recognize the accent of your own parents because they're who you grew up with. Now, many years ago, I worked at a company that did not have a weekend receptionist. Now, whoever was on duty would answer the telephone. Now, I remember one day picking up the call and hearing somebody with a thick accent start to speak. I remember rolling my eyes and inwardly saying, geez, now I have to deal with a foreigner. And it was my father calling me at work. And it was at that moment I realized two things. Number one, wow, my dad really has a strong accent. And number two, that I obviously harbored a bias towards people that weren't American and truly, up until that point in time, didn't understand it. Now, flash forward to just a few years ago when I was at the real estate office I worked for, and I overheard the receptionist tell the agent who was on floor duty that there was a floor call, but the woman on the phone had a very strong fill in the blank accent and was hard to understand. Now, this agent responded, I don't want the call. Fill in the blank people always fill in a really horrible stereotype. So I was truly taken aback. I said that I would take the call. Now, I'm going to admit that this woman was hard to understand because she did have an accent, but we understood each other eventually, and she needed help with getting her parents' home sold, and they spoke no English, and I was going to be their third agent. Now, we worked really well together because I had confronted my internal bias, and I realized that people of different cultures from different countries than me are just people like me. Now, I got her parents' home sold, and after the deal, she let me know that she appreciated me treating her and her parents no differently than I would have treated anybody else. She said that was not the experience she had with the other agents. She also let me know that she wanted to move. So there was two more transactions. And she ended up spreading the word in her community that she had an agent who didn't treat people like they were different, which resulted in more transactions, all from facing my internal bias of what foreigners really did mean to me. Paula?
All right. Thank you very much, panel. Now it's time to open the meeting to other stories, but first I'm going to make some changes to the layout. While the panel was speaking, we had them highlighted so that you could see all of them. The adjustments that I've made should allow you to see everyone, but at this point, if you have not already done so, you might want to change your view to gallery view. It won't happen automatically when we unspotlight the panel. If you are not sure how to do that, I'm going to copy and paste some instructions into the chat box in just a second, and then you'll be able to do that. There we go. All righty. So if you have not already alerted us that you have a story to tell, please type the word story in the chat box. And when I call your name, please unmute yourself and share your story. Remember to keep them to less than 3 minutes. This will allow us to hear from as many people as possible. Again, if you feel the need to share your emotions, we encourage you to use the meeting reaction button on your Zoom control bar. Please indicate that you want to tell a story if in fact you do have a story to tell. At this time, if you just want to make comments or ask a question about something you've heard, we ask you to just hold that thought. We have a lot of time at the end of the storytelling for group discussion. So let me check the chat box. All right. Bipin, if you would unmute yourself and share your story with us, thank you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, hey, thank you very much for allowing me. When I first immigrated to America, that was about 30 years ago. Now, I did speak good English, but it was British English, having grown up in India. So, and I was working for American Express uh, in the travel department. I had to talk to people every day on phone. I couldn't understand some of them, and many of them could not understand me. It was difficult. So American Express sent me to a speech coach to Harcum Junior College in Bryn Mawr, and we practiced speaking, and then the coach will tell me how I should be pronouncing. So that helped me a little bit understanding or be understood. And then in my next job, people would say, "Go back to your country." I said, "This is my country. This is the country where all of us are making it our own." If you said, "Go back to your country," the only people who'd remain in this country would be the American Indians, because everybody else migrated to this country maybe 200-300 years ago. Maybe you and your family or your other previous generations came here centuries ago, but nobody can say, "This is my country and go back to your country." Now, the person who was telling me, maybe he was kidding, but I told him that this is my country. I have lived here for longer than I have lived in the country where I was born. I may not be able to speak English the way you do, but I can be understood. When you're coming from a different culture, you have different ways you are raised. In India, we call petrol. Here we call gas. In India, they say vitamin, when here we call vitamin. So there are so many examples, so many cultural examples of how different things are done in each country, in each culture. Uh, when you go to southern part of the U.S., in Alabama and certain other states, things are, you sometimes may not be able to understand them. Even in New Jersey, even in Philadelphia, you talk to different natives, you can't really, because they have that little different accent. So other than that, I don't think that I have faced as much discrimination. I have tried to, I have made some great friends who speak different languages, who have come from different cultures. And I am excited that I was invited to be part of this task force.
Thank you, Bipin. We
Thank you.
appreciate that perspective. I'm going to call on the next person in the chat box, Lori Howell. Will you unmute yourself and share your story?
There you go. Hi, everybody. I'm Mike's wife, Lori. I'm pretty sure you guys know that by now, but Mike touched on his childhood and how being Black in a white neighborhood affected him, and how being Black too light in a Black neighborhood affected him. But when Yasmin was sharing about her family being multicultural, I think there's a whole nother element that we have to really understand and know that when Mike and I sometimes we'll go out, if we go out with our family, I mean, we're very, very mixed. Most everybody on Mike's side is Black. Most everybody on my side is white. Our kids have friends that are of all different colors, and all different colors, like, from the blonde hair, blue eye, to very, very dark. And we go out as a family, and love each other, but people don't accept us as a family. They don't know that we're a family. They look at us that we couldn't possibly be family. We had one incident. We were at the beach and we took all the kids to play mini golf. And when we approached the gate, there was like 15 of us. And the lady said, "Oh, hi, how are you?" We said, "Good, how are you?" And she's like, "So what group home are you guys from today?" And she immediately assumed that we were from a group home because we were a very diverse group. And that's just the way people think. When Yasmin's family maybe gets together, they don't understand who could be married to who, or how that goes, or how that makes you feel. So I just wanted to share that from a perspective of being in an interracial marriage for 30 years now, and a completely integrated family. Everything we do, we just keep going, right? We just keep going. This is us, and we just keep moving forward and try to be as gracious as we can to people when you get comments like that. So thank you for letting me share.
Thank you, Lori. Appreciate that. Again, if you want to share your story, please make that note into the chat and we will call on you. We are encouraging you to share your stories. We understand that this opportunity to share such a personal story may leave you vulnerable. Know that this is a judgment-free zone. The purpose here is to raise awareness and hopefully grow some empathy among the group that's here today. Meredith, I see you would like to share a story. Thank you. Would you unmute yourself and do that?
Sure. Can y'all hear me?
Thank you. Yes.
Okay. Oh, first of all, it's really great to see so many familiar faces on here, and just so many faces in general. Growing up, I was not necessarily born and raised in what you would call a diverse town. I had an enormous family of 140 first cousins and aunts and uncles. So we kind of lived in this very comfortable bubble. I did have an adopted Black and Puerto Rican uncle, but we never talked about his race or his culture or his background. He was just one of us, and that's just kind of the way I guess we always looked at it. But my family was super loving, but farmers on my father's side, and my mother's side of the family were mainline car dealership owners. So very different people, but still, I'd say both of them just very much lacked education, cultural education and diversity. So I remember when I was getting ready to go to college, I was just so excited at the opportunity to even meet other kinds of people. Even when I went to high school, I think there were less than 10 people in the school that were non-white. So I ended up in the restaurant business and I traveled the world for 10 years and I met so many amazing different kinds of people and cultures and got to learn. I was just super fortunate. I was just really lucky in different states and countries. And eventually, after I got sick of the restaurant business, I moved back to the Philadelphia area and then just kind of kept going back west on 422 until I ended up where I was born. In that process, I realized that the town hadn't changed and my family hadn't really changed, but I had changed a lot. And getting into real estate was, it was a challenge for me because I feel like there's a lot of casual racism in my town, and people are very comfortable saying things to people, including myself. And I'm married to a Black man, a beautiful Black man. And I think that because they think that I was born and raised here, that maybe I think like them or that I don't care about everyone. I don't know what it is, but it's actually a really difficult part of my job, probably the hardest part of my job. I've been out on showings with people that I didn't know well and had them say things like, you know, I really don't want to live next to Black people. And so my responses have been, well, I guess we're not going to be neighbors. And I guess we're not going to have a working relationship because that's just not how I do my job. And I can't tell you how many clients I've actually fired. And I think how many people, I think because I am so out about my my seeking out culture and diversity and inclusion. I think that I've started to kind of weed out some of those people that normally would never work with me anyway, because I think people are starting to get to know me a little bit better. But I think that is, that's probably the one thing that I struggle with a lot is how casual people are and how easy it is for people to say something to people that they don't know without knowing their story. So yeah, it's been a challenge. And so in my office, you know, we're a super small office, but we are all, you know, white people. And I think it's my responsibility as a broker to try as hard as I can to make our little white office as diverse as possible. Even, I mean, we have a library of books. I encourage everybody to participate in these events and these webinars, but there's definitely something missing on a whole, you know, just how freely I feel like people are willing to just say the wrong things to anyone.
Thank you, Meredith. We appreciate that. Next up, Priscilla McDonald, if you would unmute yourself and share your story. Thank you.
I am Puerto Rican. I was born in Lancaster County. My parents moved to Puerto Rico and then we came back when I was in second grade. Lancaster, I was born in the city. Lancaster is a very, well, at that time was a very rural area, a lot of farms, a lot of very conservative religious folks. And it's amazing how religious people think that it's okay to feel terrible about other people. So we were not permitted to swim in the county pool. And I asked my mother why, and she told me that it was because Puerto Rican men had pinched the women in the water. And you know, I thought that was kind of strange, but I was thinking, why did my mother do this? And so what happens is when racism is very overt, you adapt it inside. You have to reconcile with what happens on the outside world, and we tend to blame ourselves. We lived in the city and we moved to the outskirts. I went to Lampeter Strasburg School District. When we moved in there, a letter was sent around the neighborhood petitioning that we not move in. My father was a Methodist minister, and they sent the letter to the Methodist conference. On my first day of school, they called me a spick on the bus. And you try to survive that kind of environment for 4 years. Puerto Ricans in that neighborhood, they all worked on farmland and they didn't have any money at all. And they either worked at, they called them the chicken, la chicken. So they were plucking chickens or they were working in farmlands. And so that's how people perceived me. They didn't think I could be smart at all. And I was on the top 10%. Actually, I was number 10 in the high school when I graduated, but they didn't see that. So I was not in the honor society, and it was tough to almost do anything just because of my background. So I moved to Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love. And then I found that Philadelphia, the Polish didn't like the Irish didn't like the Italians didn't. It's a human thing. We all feel comfortable with our own, but America, I believe America is changing. I've married a Black man, 45 years, and that was not supposed to work. So Lori, you just keep hanging in there. It will work. It's all about, I found that I've had to forgive people. I've been sitting on someone's table and they told me they didn't want an offer because the person was Black. I've been in the car with a buyer who told me he didn't want to be in that neighborhood because he saw a little Black kid crossing the street. And they see my complexion. They don't understand what I am. And they say, what are you? And I say, I'm Puerto Rican. So they think, well, that's okay. Well, Puerto Ricans, we have every color in the book. And by the way, Puerto Ricans are also prejudiced against color. So, when Puerto Ricans are all together, well, we're cool. We don't do the stuff white people do. We call them Americanos. Okay. So y'all are Americanos and we're cool. We don't do that stuff. But when you get in amongst the Puerto Ricans, white people have had privilege. They were from Spain. Okay, they killed off the Indians in Puerto Rico, the Taino Indians with their diseases, and then they went and they brought Africans in to do the slavery work that the Spaniards wanted to do. This is centuries of people taking advantage of other people. Why? For the money. And you had to have the perceptions that they were evil to feel comfortable in being righteous and privileged. I have learned that you have to forgive people, because when you do, you find people who don't think that way. You find that you can open doors because they let you in. They see you're different, but first I used to be told, oh, you're not like the others. I used to be told when I came into the neighborhood, I brought it up.
Thank you, Priscilla. Let's hear from a few other people. Randy has asked if she could tell a story. Would you unmute yourself, please? Thank you.
It's a short story. I grew up in Mount Airy, which was almost all white. And then I went to Germantown High School, which was 86% Black. I was a senior in 1968 when Dr. King was assassinated. And the school was holding an assembly to honor him. And a friend of mine and I decided we thought we should go, that it was important, but we got there a couple minutes late, opened the doors, walked in, and all of a sudden the speaker stopped, turned and said, there are people here that are not wanted. And we're looking around and we're like, wow, wonder who that was? And it was the two of us. We left. We figured if we weren't invited there, we shouldn't be there. But it was one of the best lessons of my life, because I got to feel how somebody else would feel. And I've tried to use that throughout my life to treat everyone equally.
Thank you, Randy. That's an important lesson. Gwen Richardson, you've asked if you could share a story. Would you unmute yourself and do that? Gwen, there you are.
Hi. So it's interesting when you say share the story. It's like, well, what do I pick? Because it's almost a daily thing. But I'll try to keep it to in the real estate realm, the current thing that's going on. So I grew up similar to some of the other people. I grew up in Christian schools, private schools, and 90% of my teachers from pre-K to 12th grade graduated from Bob Jones. If you don't know about Bob Jones, Google it, and you can see some of their policies on race. They are very proud of their racism. So I had a lot of different things happen. I had one teacher call me stupid in front of the entire class. So I had that brand for 6 years until I graduated. But my parents would say, well, after my father would go up to the school and set everything straight, they would say, well, you're going to have this throughout life, so you got to work harder than your white counterparts to be treated equal. So after I graduated from college, I had different jobs, and I would be working harder than everyone else. I would be the main person they would go to. However, I wasn't getting raises or promotions. So I'm like, I must not be working hard enough. So went to other jobs. I ended up working for professional sports. And as an assistant, I ended up coming up with an idea that put, a game that had only sold 2,000 tickets. My idea ended up selling all of the tickets, selling out. And it was very successful. And what I found out was other people would take credit for your ideas and still not value you because they figure, oh, I would have thought of this anyway. So I said, you know what? Well, let me find a job in sales where the commission is the big thing. You don't have to worry about one boss making that decision. So I said, well, what's the biggest sales? Houses. So I went into real estate and went to all the different training, and I paid for ads, and I still was not getting a whole lot of listings or buyers, and didn't understand. So I ended up in about a depression for about 5 years. I've been a realtor for 10 years. For 5 years, couldn't figure it out. And I'm like, what am I doing wrong? And what happened was one of the assistants in the office became a realtor. And all of a sudden, she has the exact same ad that I have, and she's killing it. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? Then I remembered I have a degree in sociology. I don't know why it didn't click sooner. That people have natural biases. It doesn't matter what color you are, you have a bias. People like to well, not like, they unconsciously, most of the ads that realtors buy, there's at least three choices. So if it's three choices, they're going to pick the person that looks most like them or their community. It's not a thing where people are running around with robes and crosses, but the effect on me is still the same. Um, but I think it's subconscious. Well, it is subconscious because there are studies that show that it's a subconscious thing. Um, but at any rate, I'm sorry, I'm all over the place. But at any rate, it did help me because I came out of depression. I'm like, oh, so it's not me. I, was doing the right things. But what's bothering me is I like, sharing because I do realize, just being on Facebook with some of the people I graduated with from school, that not sharing is not good because they really don't know. Um, because they're not in your shoes, so they think that people are just whining and it's not as bad as it is. Um, but at the same time, I think that we need to go further and figure out some ideas of how we could change it because the subconscious is hard to change, but I think if people are willing, and it seems like people are willing right now to admit there is an issue, there is a problem, how can we move forward and not just be here 10 years from now, 20 years from now, still in the same place? We're an awesome country of all sorts of different colors and races and cultures. How can we, you know, be the best that we can possibly be?
Thank you, Gwen, very much. Appreciate everyone participating today. Thank you for those that shared stories. Um, Tracy, speak up if I missed anyone, but I think I did catch everyone who said they wanted to share. What we'd like to do now is open the discussion up to how did these stories affect you? The stories that you just heard, how did they affect you? How did they make you feel? Did they make you comfortable, uncomfortable? Did they trigger any kind of an awareness of the power of diversity or inclusion? Did they create any desire to do something? Would love to hear what you've been thinking and feeling as you listened to the stories today. Anyone? You can just unmute yourself and chime in. I think it's probably safe to do that for the moment. If not, we'll organize a little better.
Paula, I'll chime in, even though I shared a story, but for me, I think Lori and Meredith's stories really kind of, for me, touch a place with me because you're being judged much as Judith was, a book by its cover, without knowing that the insults or microaggressions or biases or whatever we want to hear, whatever we want to term that, it applies to you because of your family structure. But because your cover doesn't tell that story, I think, I have a lot of friends that are in biracial relationships, and I think it's easier for them to see the microaggressions and the biases that are out there than it is for someone who's not in that situation, because they're getting it they're on both sides of the fence. They're being spoken to as if they they must agree with the white folk, but then they know what it's like to be raising Black sons and being married to a Black husband. So I think that, that is a very interesting perspective to have. And I feel really bad that you guys have to feel that way. But Gwen, I think with you talking about the diversity and how do we get this mindset to change, I think that's the big question. I think people have been so comfortable in recent years because there's been no uprisings, there's been no I guess there's been no awareness, no crazy wild awareness. You know what I mean? If you wanted to be aware, you were aware, and if you didn't want to be aware, you could be comfortably numb, as I call it. And I think this is a great opportunity now that we are putting everybody in an uncomfortable position. Have those uncomfortable conversations. Have those uncomfortable conversations with people of every different background. Find out what it's like from their perspective, and then do what you can to be the change you want to see. And that's kind of why I'm here. But those stories, I think, were the ones that stuck out to me the most.
Thanks, Teresa. Anyone else?
So if
Hello.
I was taken by Bipin's story. I loved it very much because I think it helped us understand that there was a difference between language differences and cultural differences. And somehow, sometimes we get caught in the trap of thinking that everybody that comes to this country needs to fully assimilate to whatever our internal idea of what being American is. And that's really not the way that it works. And especially when you're in a sales position that sometimes deals with people of many, many different cultures, understanding those cultures is key. And I'm going to tell you about a book that I read that I advise everybody to read. It's called Kiss, Bow, or Shake Hands. It's written by Terry Morrison and Wayne Conaway. And they actually have a few different versions of it out now. There's one specifically for Latin America. And it helps you understand the differences between our cultures. While we're all people, we all may have a different culture or way of doing things. And the more that you work towards understanding the differences between cultures, the better you'll be able to work with those cultures.
Thanks, Richard. Christine, you said you had a question? Christine?
Yeah, hi. My experience with multicultural through real estate is that I live in Norristown. It's a very diverse town. My daughter went through the Norristown School District, and I feel like we're culturally, at least racially, very mixed. And in my business, I over the last few years, I just tend to, I don't know how this came about, but I just have a lot of people that I work with, a lot of investors that have immigrated to this country, and they're from, most of them are from one particular Asian country. But I also have had clients from Caribbean islands and different places. So I feel like the majority of the people I've worked with over the last few years are non-white and from other cultures other than, white, middle class, what we're the, well, anyway, you know what I'm saying. So my question is, I feel very hesitant when I'm meeting a new person, or even after I've worked with them for a little while, to ask them questions about, like, where are you from? How long have you been in this country? What language are you speaking? What is your culture around this holiday? I always feel like by asking those questions, I'm being racist. And so I tend to not mention it. I think, if I don't mention it, that's being really, accepting and but on the other hand, these are interesting people with interesting, and some of them that I've known now for years, we have gotten into a little bit more personal conversation, and I do know where they're from and their language, but it makes me scared to ask questions, thinking that just by asking and acknowledging their differences, and they're things that I'm not familiar with, it's somehow being, racist. And I just wondered if anyone wanted to speak to that. I would like to be more open with it, but I'm afraid.
I can answer that, Christina, if you don't mind. The way to break the ice so that we're not breaking any laws is, if you don't mind me asking you, I'd just like to know where you are from. I love your accent, or I just would like to learn a little bit more for my own knowledge. I do it all the time because I speak, like 6 languages. So for me to find someone else that I can pick up another language or pick up another culture, and not go against anyone, and it's a 50-50 shot. Some people just don't want to share, which is okay, because you can tell them, if you don't mind me, and they say, oh, I mind, and you say, okay, that's it, you just step back from it. But if they smile and then you just give them, they say you give them a finger, they'll take off your arm. It's kind of that situation. So if you have someone that's interested in it, when you give them that finger, they will give you all the information you want without, and it's a different way of approaching individuals. You'll love it afterwards, and you'll be amazed by what it is, I wanted to answer the question, but I also had a comment about everyone. I'm not first generation in this country, believe it or not. And when I speak the different languages, you will not notice that I am not from that in particular place, because I speak it so well that I have no accent to it. So it's very hard for people to understand what it is with the culturals and, with the backgrounds and everything. The other thing I wanted to say is my children are first generation in this country. They only speak English. They do not speak any of the languages I speak. And I did that myself because I want them to learn for themselves what they can learn from their surroundings and how to treat others. So my point in saying this was, if you yourself can teach within yourself what is good for you and how to make it better, and then it's like that trickle down effect. You have it with your children, you have it with your peers, you have it with your surrounding. It becomes a norm of, yes, that's the way I should be reacting. Everyone has some type of racial thing. I'm one of 7, and if you saw all of us, you wouldn't think we were related, and we're from the same mother and father. My sister has a joke and tells everyone, this is my sister from the German father, because she doesn't look anything like me. So these things are just, it becomes very uncomfortable, but some people make a joke out of it to make it a comfort thing. And you just have to learn to make yourself knowledgeable and educated in these things. And we need to remember that not everyone has the educational level for that. And as I tell my children, we live in a big city. That's why we have these opportunities to make these committees and have everyone involved and expose what is right and what is wrong and what is possible. But if we go out of these big cities, it is very normal for them to act which way everyone is sharing their stories, because they don't know. They don't have that level that we are on right now. So as a part of this group and this committee, we want to make sure that everyone can be exposed to that, and to have not that fear inside of them to hold them back, that, oh, my accent is heavy, or I'm from a different background, or I'm from a multicultural relationship, or, my this thing happened. That we try to make it in a way that everyone can be comfortable in their own skin and what they say and how they approach. Michael had a very nice presentation for brokers the other day, and I was listening in on it. And afterwards, I spoke to my broker, and she said, it's been 40 years I'm hearing the same tune and nothing has changed. To me, that was a wake-up call. So I'm very pleased and very honored that all of you participated and are trying to make a difference, and we will change things. Right, Mike?
If I could just add on to that, thank you so much for saying that. And a lot of folks have said, you know, what do we do? How do we make the change? Well, this is the first step, right? Because we can't change anything that we're unaware of that needs to change. And I think what I've learned over this, I got involved in diversity and inclusion about race and the things that were specific to me. But what I learned is that I have implicit bias towards other things. And I think some of us have even shared that, you know, they've recognized implicit bias in ourselves. And if we're not first willing to take a look inside and say that, you know what, yeah, you know what, I did have that, like Richard said, then we can't change because our beliefs drive our behavior. And it's not just about race. This is not just about race. There's so many other protected classes that we need to be aware of. And it really comes down to one simple thing, and that's treating people the way that you want to be treated. It really comes down to treating people the way you want to be treated and understanding that we all come from a different place and have a different perspective. But the most important thing that I would hope that we could get across today that I've learned is that when we put those perspectives together and we include everybody, it is really a better result. And that's what we're all looking for. And I want to thank everybody else also for being here today, because this right here shows me that, you know, this is voluntary. We're all independent contractors and we're taking an hour and a half out of our time because something's going on that we really need to be a part of, and we want to be a part of. What can we do to make that change? So thank everybody for showing up here today.
Paula,
Yes.
I'd like to address Christine's concerns there. It's one of the things that makes our business exceptionally different from any other type of sales business out there. And that is that, you know, if you're selling posters, you're not sitting in someone's living room, you know, playing with their children or becoming personally involved with their lives because they're making a personal purchase. And one of the things that's happening, I think, in our culture, our society today, is that's making our ability to do our jobs well, which is a relationship building business. It's not sales, relationship building. And one of the things that's kind of kneecapping it a little bit, if you will, is the level to which the introduction of maybe a cancel culture or kind of maybe an oversensitivity or overreaction to some things has come in to social dialogue. I heard an interview with a woman of color. She's a visiting professor at Smith College, and she's giving a course on cancel culture. And her name is Loretta Ross. If you have an opportunity, look up, see if you can find the interview that she gave, Loretta Ross. It was really, really fascinating. But we have to be able to build relationships with people. And part of that is, hey, where are you from? You know, I love your accent. Where's it from? But we all know court cases have arisen from just such questioning. So we are shackled a bit by that. So how do we work around it? I don't know. And I think maybe Yasmin's suggestion of opening, do you mind if, is one way that you can handle it. Anyway.
Thanks, Judith.
That's it.
And if I may, I want to.
Teresa, I'm going to interrupt 1 second. Jordan Turner's been waiting patiently to share for quite a while here. So Jordan, if you would unmute yourself, I didn't miss you. I just didn't have an opportunity to break in. So go for it. Jordan, are you still here? There you are.
Hello, can everybody hear me?
Thank you. Yes.
Oh, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to speak. I appreciate everybody's comments and remarks. As a new realtor that has just gotten a real estate license about 4 or 3 months ago, this is very informing, and I appreciate everybody's journey and how they came into real estate and how long they're staying and their tenure in this career. I am happy to, enjoy this time with everybody who are know what they're doing and are veterans and everything that comes with, real estate and their journey throughout this time. So I just want to say thank you, and I'm definitely going to take these stories and I'm going to use it in my business practice on how I can better myself. So thank you, everybody, and I appreciate this time with you guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Jordan. We appreciate that. Terry Repetto, you were waiting as well. Did you have something to add?
Hi, everybody. I've been in real estate now for almost 22 years, and my family grew up in the South. However, I grew up in the North, and there were some definite racial undertones to the way my parents were brought up, but I never had them. I've lived in 14 different houses in many different states and have dealt with many different cultures, and I haven't seen color. I have, however, seen personality flaws, and personality flaws come in every color, from every region of the country, from every place that you grew up, and I'm sure everyone has a story. My real estate background started in Berks County, which to me was very conservative. And one of the wealthiest people that I knew there, you would never have known it. He wore overalls with holes in his jeans, and his flannel shirt was ripped, and he was a multimillionaire. Moved to California in San Diego, where diversity was, it definitely hit me full force, where I was dealing with many different cultures, many different religions, many different backgrounds. The biggest difference that I found was a financial difference. And it was very opening to me to not judge someone by how I saw a color now, or a education now, or a where you're from now, as to what you could afford to purchase. And that was very eye-opening to me, not to judge someone, and to also then be open to stepping out of my comfort zone to show $1 million properties, to show $50,000 properties, to show and everything in between. And I just feel like we need to remember that we never ever know what someone's been through. We don't know their background. We don't know how they got out of bed today. And we don't know what stories are in their head at any given moment or time. So be kind and be brave and do your job. And your job is to serve everyone, no matter who they are, why they're there. They all want a house, or they want to get rid of a house. And they're wonderful. Their stories are wonderful. Get to know them. Get to know everything. And don't judge, because you never, ever know. You don't know my story. I don't know yours. And you don't know theirs.
Thanks, Terry. Teresa, you were waiting, and then Priscilla, you're next.
Yeah, Paula, I just wanted to touch on something that the question that Christine had about, how do we approach it without being insulting, right? So the majority of my business is, I have a lot of investors, but I also have a lot of multicultural, multiracial clients, because I work a lot in the sections of the city that are multicultural and even generational, which also presents some complications there. So what I always do is, when I meet somebody for the first time, And I'm not saying this is right. I'm just saying this is how I get past that uncomfortable portion of it. I just go, "Hi, I'm Teresa. I'm a real big hugger. I'm a, real touchy-feely kind of gal. This COVID thing is killing me. What are your cultural, what are your feelings on how we should form this relationship?" And so I before COVID, I would just say, "Hi, I'm a hugger. What is your culture like to do?" Or something to that effect. Or what do you do? I can even leave culture out of it and say, would you prefer not to be? Are you a handshaker? I kind of make a joke out of it, almost like kind of lighthearted, break the ice kind of thing. That usually prompts them to tell me more than I actually asked. So I just wanted to know, do you want to hug this out? Do you want to shake hands? Do you want to, how do you want to do? And the reason I did this was because one of my first investor clients said to me, when I put my hand out to shake it with him, he said, "Wait a minute, I'm Muslim and we don't touch other women other than our wives. So I won't be able to shake your hand, but it doesn't mean I don't want to work with you." And that got me thinking, like, this is how I can get past that uncomfortable question. I can say, I don't want to offend you. I want to make sure I respect your beliefs and your personal opinions. I'm a hugger. What do you do? And that's kind of how I open it up with people. And I can get a feel pretty quickly as to whether or not they're comfortable answering that question or they'd rather avoid it altogether. If they're comfortable, we keep talking. If they're not comfortable, we go in, we see the house, we leave. It's all business. So that was just my suggestion. You might want to almost do it as an icebreaker.
Thanks. That's a great idea. Priscilla, thank you for raising your hand. You have to unmute yourself. There you go.
So I just want, I'm sorry, the last person that was there, she had some great ideas. The last person that spoke, but I wanted to get back to Judith, because she was asking, how can she ask questions to people without coming off offensive? And I think we just have to remember that we just have to kind of chill on the inside and be comfortable who we are. We have to remind ourselves that we're salespeople, that we have outgoing personalities. And if there's a way that you can look past the person, how they look, by the way, there are prejudices with people who are very, very attractive and prejudice with people who are not so attractive. They've had studies on babies and all kinds of stuff. So you kind of have to look at the person and just be yourself. Judy, I just get a really warm feeling from you when you speak. And I think you could speak in front of anybody and you could come off as a genuine, heartfelt person. And I think that's all any of us want to hear from someone who's trying to sell us the most important financial decision we'll ever make in our life.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments? We have just a little bit of time left. We do have some wrap up to do, but I want to make sure that everyone has a chance to speak. Judith, did you have something?
Thank you, Priscilla. That was very sweet. I do want to share one thing that I did hear from this woman, Loretta Ross. And one thing that she said is, if we want to ask people, she was actually quoting a minister, so I'm paraphrasing this for this group. If we want to ask people to change how they view us, then we have to be really sure that we're there for them when they do change. And I thought that was really very profound. Just wanted to share it.
I'd be remiss not to mention this. The other side of things is the clients. I think that we need to be more aware, not only as fellow realtors, but also clients. I've been on the opposite side of, like, I've represented the seller, and their realtor, the buyer's realtor, was white, and the mortgage people were running them around in circles, asking for the same documents over and over again, coming up with documents that I've never even heard of, to prove that they have the money they have. The client was, They just wanted a house. So they just kept sending the same documents. And, we are now 3 weeks past where we're supposed to close. And it occurred to me, I'm like, why is the mortgage company not trying to close this? And again, I don't know why. Well, I guess here's the other aspect of when this stuff happens to you. You're never sure whether it's just a normal thing going on, or if is it, I don't even want to use racism because I think that's part of why people reject the idea so much. Let's just call it bias, that there is a bias going on. So finally, 3 weeks in, I tell the buyer's agent, I'm like, this really sounds like racism. I think they are trying to discourage your buyer from taking out the loan, but they can't obviously, you know, reject them because they have all the documents and they're, they're credit worthy. So I think you need to talk to them about that. Immediately, the guy's like, "Oh, no, it can't be that. It can't be that." I'm like, "Well, wait a minute. What else could it be? And if it's not that, you need to at least have that conversation with them." So I think, as realtors, no matter what color you are, whether you're, you just need to be aware when things aren't going the way they're supposed to be going. You need to start checking boxes like, why is this? And even if you don't think it's racism, you need to hold people accountable. I also was looking at an article last night, and there was a black millennial who was married to a white man. And when the appraiser came along, she was home, and he downgraded the appraisal for under what it was supposed to be because she was black. And they did, end up proving that. But yeah, we just need to be also aware that when things don't go the way they're supposed to go, you need to examine why they didn't go that way.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So we did hear a couple of people mention the idea of implicit bias today. So in the chat, I am getting ready to share with you a link to NAR's implicit bias video. If you have not already taken a look at that, it's about 50 minutes, but it would be well worth your time. It was an eye-opening experience for me to realize the different implicit biases that we have. And implicit means that we didn't recognize, they're unconscious, they're behind the scenes. So I think all of us could benefit from taking a look at that. So I share that for you, and if you have not already done it. And then the second link that I'm going to share for you right now is NAR just released a simulation. It's called Fair Haven. And they will walk you through, again, this simulation also takes about an hour to an hour and a half. And you can stop and start it, but the simulation is designed to show us what we're doing, how we're leaving money on the table. Someone had talked about that earlier as well. They take the opportunity to test you, so to speak, on your knowledge of fair housing and discriminatory issues. And they also take the time during this Fair Haven simulation to put you in the buyer's shoes and to feel what it feels like for them. So I encourage everyone to perhaps take a look at those when they have the opportunity. And I believe someone shared a link to a book back up in the scroll as well. And I would encourage you to take a look at that. And we thank you for all of those suggestions. There was a question about emailing the links. Yes, I can email those to you as well in a follow-up as soon as I get a grasp on who was here. With that, we do just have a couple of closing remarks from our panel. And Yasmin, I'll ask you to start if you would. You have to unmute, sweetie.
Sorry about that. So the objective of today's workshop was to raise awareness and empathy. And clearly we've gotten through to everyone, and I'm very happy with that. In doing so, we hope more realtors will engage in diversity and inclusion. Michael?
Summarize the value of diversity and inclusion. Judith?
Judith, you're muted.
Sorry, we were doing a little lip reading exercise there.
Sorry, I don't know if I was supposed to read that or not.
That's so I got you covered, Michael.
I got a little bit further. I was like, hold it, I forgot that part.
Yeah. So inviting more diverse identities into our conversations and encouraging all those identities to participate in the conversation brings us more possible solutions. You think about it, if you have 5 people with the same background looking at the same problem, they'll likely come up with similar solutions. But practicing diversity and inclusion will present us with solutions maybe we would not have otherwise thought of.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judith.
You're welcome, Michael.
We're all a team here.
Got your back.
So thank you to everyone in attendance. Thank you especially to those that shared their stories. We do recognize what a vulnerable spot that was, but you opened a lot of eyes. Thank you to everyone who listened to the stories, because without an audience, we can't spread the word. We encourage you to use the recording of this session to start conversations in your workplace or your community. If you would like to organize a similar workshop in your office or your community, please contact association staff for a guide. This workshop is just the beginning of what we hope will be a series of activities designed to raise awareness, grow empathy, create opportunities, and invite engagement as we work toward more diversity and inclusion in our workplaces and our communities. Richard, do you have a final word for us?
No, I do. As Teresa said at the beginning of the program, diversity is being invited to the party. Inclusion is being asked to dance. I'd like to thank everybody on this call today. Your dance moves are amazing. So please join us on our mission by inviting more people to the party and by asking them to dance.
Thank you.